Time for under 30. We're looking at Applied Digital. It's a company, I got to be honest, Jenny, I didn't know what it was until about 4 hours ago.
You know what? Me either. But I will say, when you look at its chart, actually, we might know why, because it's up almost 500% year to date. So this was, relatively speaking, I mean, like a penny stock, basically, so 6 months ago. So that's probably why it's now on our radar, and it's pushing more and more into AI. So here to tell us more on that, I'd like to welcome in George Tsilis, senior markets correspondent for the network. So George, walk us through this price move today, because this is not the first big upswing we've seen in shares, with them now up about 1,200% off their 52-week low.
Yeah, it's not the first time we've seen this sort of parabolic move. We actually had another one back in late 2021, so it seems to be following some of the trends in Bitcoin. I think that's important to note here, and that's actually one of the catalysts associated with the movement we've seen out of recently for this name Applied Digital, which I didn't know very much about the company beforehand, but there is some tremendous catalyst behind it. Now, one of the things about it is it's basically a next generation high-performance computing data center platform. They basically provide hosting services for Bitcoin miners, companies like Riot and Marathon Digital, symbol MARA, which we know in the past few months or so alongside Bitcoin, those stocks have been moving higher as well. But this company also provides higher hyperscale language processing. We know artificial intelligence and graphics rendering has become a big theme as of late. That's another catalyst, I think, that's behind the stock movement. And there's also another meaningful catalyst when it comes down to growth, real growth in terms of sales, not just in equity. But the company did secure, based upon their announcement, $460 million contract from a particular customer, and that's over 3 years in terms of a sales contract. Alongside, if you look back about a month or so ago, they secured another $180 million contract for 2 years. So this is a company that's growing exponentially in terms of price. It was literally a penny stock back in 2019, and it's actually growing exponentially its sales growth. Considering the sales for last year, in the last 4 quarters, there was about 41 million. The guidance for 2023 now is about 56 million, but the kicker is, if you look at the guidance for sales now, going into 2024, 302 million. So you just compare that to 50 million for this year. And then also for 2025, they're guiding for 429 million. So we're seeing essentially an exponential move in sales growth. And I think that corresponds to what we're seeing in terms of the price.
George, it used to be called Applied Blockchain. I think the shift maybe to digital in the name is maybe symbolic of sort of what we saw kind of happen in the digital asset space, and maybe this opens up the potential customer base a little bit more and can capitalize on some of the AI technology hype that we're seeing. But who are they competing with? I mean, this isn't a company competing with like NVIDIA, which we know has data center roles, but they're making more of the infrastructure. It sounds like Applied Digital is more of the software.
It is, and that's the thing. So they're competing with companies like Digital Turbine. They're competing with Matterport. These are a couple of names I think we've even talked about on this program. They're smaller scale competitors in the software space. So if you consider their business, it's not necessarily hardware. It is, again, a software-based, hyperscaled cloud-based platform. So it's basically data center software. That's essentially how you could describe their technology. But it's a very small company now. Not necessarily as much as it has been in the past, considering the multi 100% increase in price. Its market cap right now is around 870 million, and one would say, hey, that doesn't necessarily mean much, considering the price action we've seen. But if you consider just the numbers are reported for 2025's sales of around 429 million, it's only trading around 2 times 2024 sales. So it's not exorbitant in terms of sales, but one of the things you have to keep in mind with these moves is what's going on with cash burn. And so if you look at how much the company has in cash, about 22 million, but they're burning about 42 million in cash. So it looks like to me, again, there's a reason why the stock is moving higher, because of the sales contracts they have. But at the same time, there's probably an incentive for them to issue a secondary offering, just because they don't have enough cash on their balance sheet to secure their expenses for the next year. So short interest, about 11% of the free float. I'd pay attention to that. If you start to see that increase, that might be meaningful in terms of additional short sellers adding to their positions in expectation of a secondary offering, which in terms they may end up covering after that point. So this will be interesting. I can't say what will happen from here, but there's no doubt their sales are improving significantly, and I think that, again, corresponds to the price.
Yeah, and George, really quick before we let you go, I was seeing this is only their second AI customer, so I guess you could look at this name and sort of what you're saying. There is so much more potential even still with its valuation relatively low,
Yes.
and the fact this is only its second AI customer is sort of blowing my mind.
That's true, and so you have to think about the number of customers. I think it's important here as well, because some would say, maybe even analysts who may provide some expectations on the company because there's more visibility now. It depends on how many customers they have and if those customers are concentrated. So that's another thing you have to consider, which is a risk. But at the same time, the sales growth, like I said, has been tremendous, and the expectations for sales are still quite a bit higher than last year. And again, I can see why the stock is higher, but it's been very volatile, and because it's a small market capitalization name, you just have to expect volatility if you participate.
Yeah, and I think a really good look at a name that is obviously a smaller player in this overall AI boom, as we frequently talk about, like NVIDIA, AMD, but this name is also getting a nice lift. It's just all relative, I guess. So we'll leave it there. Appreciate the insight. As always, George Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent for the network.